A zero-emission transportation future. And I want to thank Senator Wynn for his leadership on this and everybody who's worked on this to get this bill through the Senate. We had another climate change advance, another bill, House Bill 1112. This is my bill to phase out super pollutants. Those are appropriately named. And when we're fighting climate change, it's good to go to eliminate super pollutants. My request bills to transform our behavioral health system are advancing. They've received bipartisan support. That's very gratifying that we have bipartisan support for my bills, and they're moving through the process. That includes House Bill 1394, which will help transition our state's model of mental health to community-based behavioral health care system and facilities to actually be in communities. And so I'm pleased to see it pass the House last week. We've got any number of other issues that are moving forward. I want to address the vaccine issue in the measles epidemic. The spread of measles has continued. A new case was discovered last week, and we know how significant this is. And it's not just the people who've been directly affected. I was disturbed to hear that there were 800 students that really were denied the right to be in school by necessity because of this measles outbreak. And I do believe it's appropriate for us to provide additional protection for our youth and all of us by advancing the bills that are now under consideration. The House bill, the House passed the vaccine exemption bill Tuesday night. It would eliminate the personal exemption for the measles vaccine with some exceptions. And I want you to know I'm supportive of both bills. Actually, the Senate bill would go further. I am supportive of that bill as well. It's really important to realize that these bills protect all of us because until we get the vaccination rate up high enough, we do not have community protection. So everyone has an interest in this to increase our vaccination rates. And I would point out that a very timely report came out a couple days ago of a very definitive report with an extreme broad assessment that was done that I believe that was definitive that there is no connection between autism and vaccines. And it is important for us to be able to share that information with parents. We are a science-based state here, and the science is very clear on this subject. So I am hopeful that these bills will make it to my desk. I'm glad that our broadband bill, championed by Senator Wellman, has received overwhelming support through the Senate. I consider this one of, if not the most important, small town and rural economic development issues, and to see that advance is really great news. I'm happy that, that my push in this has been of some help. The privacy bill in the Senate has moved forward. This would be, I think, the first bill in the nation that would, and I think could become a template for the nation's privacy bills by something that has broad support and consistency throughout multiple economies. So I'm glad to see that bill has advanced. The non-compete clause bill has advanced. I think this is important. Washington State has been a leader in the nation in protecting employees by increasing minimum wage, by having the best paid family leave bill in the nation, and now with this to protect employees against unnecessarily onerous non-competition bills, which essentially prevent people from getting jobs, is moving forward. I want to thank Senator Marco Elias for his leadership in moving that bill through. My public option suggestions are getting a good reception so far. Senator Frock, Representative Cody have shown leadership on this, and I'm glad that bill is advancing. Our early childhood education bills are advancing. Senator Claire Wilson has shown leadership in this regard. Obviously, this has been it will be a budgetary issue as well, but we know this is maybe one of the best investments we can possibly make in our society, is to give these 3- and 4-year-olds a great shot so that your zip code is not destiny, and I hope that we can continue on those bills. On our ORCA efforts, our efforts to give ORCAs a chance, we have 3 priority bills. They're making great progress, and we'll look forward to those hopefully getting to my desk. I'd like to talk about our long-term care efforts. I just had a tele-town hall with the AARP members, and we know how important this bill is. We know long-term care is not covered by Medicare or other health insurance plans. So I'm pleased that an effort to provide Washingtonians a better basis of long-term care is advancing. House Bill 1087, it creates a modest long-term care benefit plan. You may consider it sort of a mini Social Security or Medicare benefit. And under that plan, Washington workers would pay into a trust through a payroll assessment and eventually become eligible to receive benefits. And I think it's a well-balanced proposal, and this is very important because the vast majority of us today do not have long-term care insurance and could not qualify for a plan even if they wanted to, given the current economic conditions. So I want to thank Representatives Jenkins, McHugh, Cody, Harris, Theringer, and many others who've worked on this bill. Very important, and I look forward to that moving forward. I'm happy to stand for your questions. I do want to note I do have a campaign in progress, and I know there might be interest in that, but I do want folks to know that I'm here as governor, and our discussion will be confined to what's going on in state business, and I know you'll respect that in that regard. So, questions?
Governor, you put forward a healthcare proposal that incorporates aspects of public option and subsidies. Nationally, a debate has opened up among Democrats over what the real meaning of universal health care is, whether it means universal access to privately purchased health care or universal coverage. Now that you're a national candidate, where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I kind of said we're going to be talking about state government. The first question strayed beyond that, so I will answer as much as I can as governor on state business. So, look, we want to move towards universal health care. It's our goal, and we're advancing that by a public option proposal that I've made in the state of Washington. So I'm going to confine my answer to the state of Washington. This is what we can do this year in the state of Washington to advance that goal of universal coverage. And I look forward, and I'm really happy that it's moving forward because people understand how important this is. And I'm very proud of our state so far because we've made good progress. We've been one of the more successful states advancing towards universal coverage already. We've decreased our uninsured rate, I think, from 17 down to 4. We've been very successful moving forward to integrate mental and physical health. Our opioid program is, I think, one of the most advanced in the United States by providing a hub and spoke effort so that primary care physicians have a way to know how to deal with the opioid crisis. I think we've been quite successful, more successful than other states in restraining the costs that people have and keeping the cost curve down. We've been very successful in that regard. So I'm hoping that the legislature moves forward with my proposal with this on a public option, and I'll look forward to signing that bill, I hope.
Governor, in recent weeks, we've seen Senator Steve Hobbs introduce a carbon fee.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Reuben Carlisle drop a cap and trade bill, both
Mm-hmm.
Ideas that you pushed strongly for in previous sessions. Why haven't you been more vocal about pushing those forward this year?
Well, we remain open to ideas, but I do think it's important to focus on what I believe we can get done this year, and the suite of bills that I proposed are the ones that I believe we can get done this year. And I think it's very important to act this year because of the urgency of this effort, of this issue. We saw the IPCC report. We've seen the national assessments. We just need immediate action. And I have done an assessment talking to legislators of what I believe is in the realm of getting things done this year. When your house is on fire, you got to grab buckets and put the fire out. And there may be things that we think about long term about building a new piping system to the firehouse, but today we got to grab what's available. And what I have proposed are things that I do believe will be have a good chance of success this year.
Are you concerned that the clean fuel standard won't get through this year?
I think we need a clean fuel standard, and I'm pleased that more and more people in our state, in our nation, are understanding the urgency of this. The clean fuel standard has been very successful in California and other places, and so I'm strongly encouraging legislators to add it to the portfolio of bills. And those portfolio bills, I may note, that if they pass, will get roughly the same carbon pollution reduction as the initiative that did not pass last year. So these are different tools other than the carbon pricing system that, if they are adopted, will achieve the same ends, and that's important to note. So I'm backing all of them. They're all making progress. I'm happy about that. We believe in clean energy technology here. We believe in creating jobs, and I'm happy about our continued effort to do that.
Is it fair to say, Governor, you're done pursuing carbon pricing in the rest of your term?
Listen, I'm not taking off consideration in the appropriate time any measure that could help us defeat climate change. What I'm saying is that today in the Washington State Legislature, I believe these bills are the most likely to pass, and they're the ones that are most likely to help us achieve our climate reduction targets, and these are the things we should do today. I think it's really important to focus on the things we can do today because of the urgency of this. Look, the IPCC report has made very clear in the next decade or so, we have to have in place meaningful climate change reduction events. So I think that it is the urgency of the moment that is driving these bills, both in my proposal and hopefully legislative achievements. And I feel good about that. We will be leading the nation if we embrace these bills that I am proposing today. And Washington ought to be leading the nation because we're the most technologically adept.
Can you explain why it's taken 6 years for you to reach the point that you're at on that? Because it was pretty clear when it was divided government that those proposals were not going to pass, but you pursued them. Now you're saying you're trying to accomplish what we can get done today. It's a recognition that they're not accomplishable, it sounds like. I wondered what happened in the previous 6 years. What's changed?
Well, I want to reiterate something that I want to make sure, I'm not sure your question understands. My package I'm proposed today is as ambitious or more ambitious than any other package that I have proposed. And I think people have been so fixated on the carbon tax, they fail to think about these other proposals. This is not a step backwards. This is the step forward with exactly the same ambition as the carbon pricing system would have had. It will achieve the same, as I've said, I'm going to say this again because apparently it hasn't been noted. The proposals that I have proposed will have roughly the same degree of carbon pollution reduction as these other proposals. So these are the things that I think fit the moment. I think they fit the votes that we have, and I strongly suggest the legislators pass them. Repeat, what we are doing this year is the same degree of ambition as the previous years, and we have simply adjusted on the most successful legislative strategy to make that happen. And I think that what I have come to conclude is that there's a lot of technologies available to defeat climate change and build a clean energy future. But the two most successful clean energy fuels are, one, continued optimism, and two, continued perseverance. And I'm bringing both to the table right now, and I hope legislators will follow me on this.
Governor, you and the Attorney General,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You and the Attorney General are sending a warning to gun dealers today. What's in that warning? Why do you feel the need to send it?
Well, the law is that gun dealers need to do background checks. That's the law of the state of Washington. So we are standing up for the law of the state of Washington. And unfortunately, we've had some sheriffs that I think have created some undue and unnecessary confusion. We wanted to make sure that there's no confusion about what the law is. The law requires gun dealers to provide these background checks. And we want to make sure that they understood that the sheriffs creating confusion about how this would be enforced does not put gun dealers in any exposed position. We wanted to help them understand that they still have an obligation to follow the law. And I think it's been unfortunate that some of the sheriffs have created confusion, in part because I think they're perhaps confused about what's in the law. We've heard a number of sheriffs say things, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, but they aren't required to do X, Y, and Z. So we wanted to bring clarity to this for the benefit of the gun dealers so that citizens will know what their rights are. People who do not follow the law are still subject to criminal prosecution, and I've made clear that they could be still subject to criminal prosecution. through the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office has jurisdiction to do criminal prosecutions, even if the sheriffs won't. Now, this does not relieve the sheriffs of obligation, in my mind, to enforce the law. And we will be having conversations about that. I'm talking to one sheriff here in the next week or so about this to see if we can get more of a situation to give citizens clarity rather than political posturing. And I respect sheriffs' right to express an opinion about this law. They have a First Amendment right to disagree with whether they think it would be a good idea for legislators or voters to vote for it. But they do not have a right to think that there are many Supreme Courts. We have a Supreme Court who will make a decision about the constitutionality of this law. No court has ruled this unconstitutional. Zero at the moment. And I do believe if they have issues with this constitutionality, they have the right to go to court, get a ruling, and be bound by that ruling. But none of us have the right to be the Supreme Court, governors, sheriffs, or otherwise. And so I think that they have created unnecessary confusion. We're just simply trying to make sure people understand the clarity of the law.
Would you also reflect on clean fuels for aviation and the infrastructure needed to create that? Do you have any plans to create that kind of infrastructure?
Well, actually we are, and there's nothing in the clean fuels standard that's going to stand in the way of aviation. There just isn't anything like that. And I will say that unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation. Those who are climate deniers, those who agree with Donald Trump that climate change is a Chinese hoax, ascribe a lot of things to our proposals that aren't true. I've heard the president say that you can't defeat climate change, you'll have to give up your television and your car and your plane, and that's just baloney. And this is kind of like the death penalty. I went through the healthcare debate where the Republicans said that there was going to be death panels, which is a bunch of baloney. We don't have death panels, but they said we'll have death panels. We didn't have them then, we don't have them now. It's the same thing now where they argue that we won't have planes, trains, or automobiles if we have clean energy, and that's just false. We're having electric cars. We're having electric ferries, I hope, that we can build the first ferries in this state. So our plans are totally consistent with enjoying life like we are now. And in the future, I'm pleased that we have done research where we are now flying airplanes on biofuels. We've flown a Boeing 737 across the Atlantic with biofuels. This is a realistic potential, and that's one of the reasons I've continued to support further research on this at Washington State University. Alaska Airlines and Boeing are doing this in consortium. So I'm happy to say we're going to continue economic growth. We've proved we can do this in this state. We're an optimistic state, and we're going to continue to be optimistic.
Governor, the legislature is sending you a presidential primary bill, and I'm wondering first if you intend to sign it, and secondly, because the Democratic Party is currently taking a survey to see whether they will use the primary or caucuses to pick their, to award their delegates. Are you going to use your authority as the highest ranking Democrat in the state to weigh in on primaries for the selection of delegates in 2020?
Well, I have no problem with the bill. I have not been engaged in advancing the bill, so I have no problem with that bill. That's a decision that others have suggested, and I'll go along with it. It's irrelevant to my plans, and I don't have any particular thoughts about taking a position in internal Democratic politics in that regard. I just really don't.
But the bill has been sold as this will make the primary a valid primary, and people will get a chance to actually vote for a presidential nominee. Mm-hmm. If the Democrats go to stick with the caucus system, doesn't that sort of invalidate that whole premise?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I have no problem signing this bill. That's what I can tell you.
Do you think caucuses exclude voters when Democrats sit around for 7 hours a day to decide on a candidate?
I think that more people participate in primaries than caucuses. The evidence is clear on that. That's what I think. Okay, anything else?
Going back to the climate question, Hobbs and Carlisle's proposals, the same report you mentioned, the IPCC report, calls out a carbon fee as the essential tool for transforming the global economy. Mm-hmm. Given that, will you, and if so, at what point, put your weight behind, rhetorical weight, if nothing else, behind those proposals as they move through the legislature.
Hobbs's tax is not a carbon proposal. I think, Governor, you should make that clear.
Jamie's helping me, which I appreciate.
Hobbs's tax is not a carbon proposal. It's a transportation funding proposal.
So,
Be on carbon.
let me,
That is not a carbon, it does not, I'll look the Governor's speaker.
thank you. In looking at what the senator has proposed, it is designed to do transportation projects and culvert projects. It is not designed to reduce carbon pollution and would not reduce carbon pollution in any effective way to come close to what our statewide goals are. So neither the pricing amount nor the proposed investments would significantly reduce carbon pollution. In fact, it may be the opposite, and the position that it would prevent the state from having a clean fuel standard is just simply a non-starter as well. So Jamie Smith is one of the most astute judges on this, and I totally agree with her in this regard, and that it simply does not promote carbon reduction and would not be a satisfactory result. And I continue to hope that the legislature will pass a real climate change package of bills that will help us create clean energy jobs in this state, and those are the ones that I've proposed. Okay? Thank you very much. Good luck.
To that end, a couple of clarification. One, it's not the price on carbon when you have split control. We worked as hard as last year. Last year there was a carbon tax proposal. Democrats controlled both chambers, and we worked harder on that than any before and came closer.
I know, I think either I misstated or he misunderstood the question. For 6 years, carbon pricing has been at the forefront of his.
Right, but you said why only when you had split control? That's not
I was
true.
using that
That's
as an
not,
example, that's to make sure you knew that I spoke.
but it's not true. So we did it when we had Democrats control. So we did it, we had a cap and trade